This seaman is poisoning the sea. This one is also poisoning the sea. Are you a polluter of the sea or a protector of it? The sea is 7/10 of the Earth's surface, enabling us to travel and to transport goods worldwide. As well as supplying a substantial proportion of the food we eat, it plays a vital part in the well-being of our planet. Today, pollution is threatening the habitat of vast numbers of marine creatures, not just in waters close to shore, but also in the open seas. The impact upon fishing has caused many coastal states to suffer economically. Pollution also creates wider ecological damage, especially on breeding areas for birds and other species. Polluting the sea is now widely recognized as a serious problem. What do you think? Do you understand what it's got to do with you? Many people find it hard to understand how getting rid of small amounts of waste from individual ships can have such an impact on the vast oceans. The crucial point is that it all adds up. There are about 80,000 ships and about 1.5 million seafarers living and working on board. All discharges from them pollute, even those that are considered legal. For example, it has been estimated that nearly 2 million tons of garbage is generated annually by shipping in US waters alone. Of this, some 800,000 tons are disposed of at sea. Non-biodegradable plastics present a major threat of pollution, so their discharge at sea is banned. Even so, many hundreds of thousands of plastic containers are thrown into the sea annually. Such illegal acts of disposal could result in heavy fines or imprisonment. Toxic chemicals can be ingested and retained by some marine organisms. In this way, poisons can be introduced into the food chain. So it is vital that everyone on board follows the MARPOL regulations and is familiar with the emergency procedures. Ballast water is another source of potential pollution. Under some circumstances, the careless discharge of ballast water can transfer aquatic creatures from one part of the world to another. In their new environment, without natural predators, they can quickly become a threat to the ecology of that region. An international convention, the Ballast Water Management (BWM) Convention, was agreed by IMO in 2005. This sets out standards for the control and management of ballast water and sediments. These BWM rules will help to prevent foreign marine organisms being discharged into coastal waters. A number of treatment systems have now been developed and approved for treating ballast water. But even when they are installed, ballast water exchange while far offshore will remain a key procedure. All shipping companies must ensure that their ships carry a shipboard oil pollution emergency plan. Chemical tankers must, in addition, carry a shipboard marine pollution emergency plan to cover potential environmental contamination from noxious liquid substances. Ensuring compliance with pollution control is the responsibility of the flag state, the ship owner and the master. Look at this example. Clear, clean water. If particles of pollutant are dropped into the water, they start spreading immediately. soon all the water will be affected. If this substance is a deadly poison, even at minute concentrations, it will pollute a volume of water perhaps millions of times the volume originally released. It is for this reason that MARPOL Annex 3 provisions on harmful substances in packaged form are included in the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code. The emergency arrangements are set out in the IMDG code. Where practicable, any leakages of marine pollutants from damaged containers and packages should be retained on board using suitable absorbents and proprietary leak-proof containers. Where this might cause unacceptable safety risks to the crew, the leakage should be washed overboard with large quantities of water as set out in the code. Vessels carrying dangerous cargoes, including noxious liquid substances, must adhere to very strict mandatory procedures. For bulk liquid substances, these include limitations on the disposal at sea of cargo residues and tank washings, and the requirement for keeping a cargo record book to log all take-up, transfer, discharge and accidental spillage of these cargoes in accordance with MARPOL Annex 2. Here, on board ship, a small amount of oil polluting the water may seem insignificant. But add up all the oil that enters the seas each year, and it comes to hundreds of thousands of tons. This is serious pollution. So how are you involved? In the first instance, there are regulations and penalties relating to all types of pollution from ships. These come from the Marine Pollution Convention, or MARPOL, which is detailed in the workbook that accompanies this video. The convention consists of 6 annexes covering oil, bulk chemicals, harmful substances in packaged form, sewage, garbage, and atmospheric emissions. This video deals mainly with oil, covered in Annex 1, and garbage covered in Annex 5. Ultimately, it's up to the master, the officers and head office to manage the ship so that everything possible is done to prevent pollution. Every ship should have an environmental policy and an officer dedicated to the task of ensuring that it works. Even if it is legal to dump waste, you should check with the environmental officer on board your ship if there is a non-polluting alternative. Do what you can to alter the way you dispose of waste. And remember that if the other 1.5 million seafarers do the same, it will really make a difference. So, let's look at the operational procedures where the danger of pollution is greatest and find solutions to minimize these dangers. Leaving aside major oil spills resulting from shipping accidents, much oil pollution arises from routine operations, such as cargo operations, ballasting of cargo tanks on oil tankers, fuel transfers during bunkering, and bilge pumping on all vessels. In cases of both bunkering and cargo operations on tankers, the critical areas are almost identical. They're principally concerned with the correct preparation work before operations begin. This includes the provision of adequate clean-up material in case a spillage occurs and careful monitoring during operations. The key points to remember during preparation work are: 1. All valves must be in the correct position. 2. All open flanges along the routing must be securely blanked off. 3. All manifold flanges must be connected correctly and securely. 4. All tanks involved must be checked to be the correct ones, and not already filled. And finally, 5. A check must be made that there are no other reasons that may prevent the operation being carried out safely. For example, is the ship securely moored and fendered? The vessel's movement alongside must be monitored constantly, and the transfer stopped in good time if the movement becomes excessive. Are deck scuppers plugged prior to cargo transfer or bunkering? This must be done to prevent polluting the sea in case a spill occurs on deck. Make sure you know how this is done on your ship. Everyone involved in the operation must clearly understand what procedure is going to take place. Is the rate and pressure of cargo transfer agreed and understood? Are the necessary communication links established? Are the starting, stopping and slow down signals agreed between everyone concerned, so that there are no language difficulties? In the case of bunkering, is the fuel to be delivered the one that was ordered? Is it the correct quantity? The methods of arranging all this vary from place to place, so the use of a checklist will ensure that nothing is overlooked. Now that the preparation work has been completed, all the cleaning material available must be placed in readiness to deal with any accidental spill that might occur during operations. Sufficient quantities of rags, absorbent granules or pads, scoops and empty oil drums should be available. The amount should reflect the risk and be adequate to contain the potential spillage. If cotton waste is used to mop up spilt oil, it should be disposed of in accordance with MARPOL regulations, and the potential fire risk must be taken into account. Also, the manifold area must be cleared and cleaned. Whatever the operation, once oil transfer begins, all the hoses and connections must be checked to be oil-tight under pressure. Ullages must be checked frequently, as the tanks must not be overfilled. Remember the most critical times during cargo operations or bunkering to ensure that all the valves in the system and all tank openings are closed. If, despite all precautions, a spillage occurs, it must be contained within a small area of the deck by, for example, forming a wall of absorbent material. In some cases, oil-absorbent packs can be put to good use. In the event of a considerable spillage, clean it up with a portable air-driven pump and a hose discharging into a large drum. Oil-absorbent granules must not be swept over the side, but kept. If there is no suitable incinerator available on board ship, the material should be safely stored in metal bins for later disposal on shore. Once it has been established that there is no further chance of an oil spill, the scuppers can be unplugged. There are other possible sources of oil pollution. Both tank washing and cargo tank ballasting are strictly regulated. Yet these operations are still responsible for a considerable amount of pollution. The ship's engine room is also a potential source of oil pollution. Here, minor oil leaks in the system can contaminate water in the bilges, sludge tank. Cooling water in the engine room sometimes leaks and becomes oily too. All vessels must install a filtering system able to remove traces of oil contamination to no more than 15 parts per million. Water discharge must be monitored by suitable equipment to make sure that the oil content is not greater than the permitted limit. If the ship operates in a MARPOL-designated special area, then the separator or filter should be fitted with an alarm and automatic cut-off device to prevent further discharge if the output rises above this figure. Many systems use disposable filter cartridges that must be changed when saturated. Saturated filters and sludge from fuel oil purification equipment must be incinerated on board or delivered to reception facilities ashore. If for any reason this water quality cannot be guaranteed, the water must not be discharged to sea, but should be uploaded into a shore reception facility. The oil separated on board may be mixed with the next cargo using load-on-top procedures. On deck, oil may leak from hydraulic lines and winch beds. Even the galley is a potential source of pollution. Used cooking oil must not be disposed of at sea. It should be treated as any other form of oil, and consideration given to storing it for shore-based disposal or incineration on board. In any operation where water and oil are mixed, the storage, separation and disposal of this mixture can lead to pollution, if not done according to strictly laid down rules. Tank washing water should be collected into slop tanks. Allow the mixture to settle, permitting the oil and water to separate. After this, the separated oil must be retained on board. The water may be discharged overboard, provided that all the conditions of MARPOL Annex 1 are observed. The same applies to ballast water on board ships where the water is held in cargo tanks. Vessels equipped with a suitable incinerator may choose to burn oily rags and other such contaminated waste. If this equipment is misused or poorly maintained, there is a real risk of air pollution, especially if the incinerator is operated at the wrong temperature. Control of incinerator emissions is detailed in Annex 6 of the MARPOL Convention. In fact, any procedure on board ship that might result in the release of noxious gases, ozone-depleting substances or volatile organic compounds must conform to these regulations. All discharges of ballast water and oil must be entered in the oil record book. It is a legal requirement to keep this up to date.
Well, I just want to see the chief or the oil record book.
Yeah, okay.
Examining port state inspectors often check these records, and inaccurate statements can lead to prosecution.
Let's start with the safety equipment, please. Safety equipment certificate.
Besides oil, the most frequently encountered pollutant from all ships is garbage. Annex 5 of the MARPOL Convention regulates its disposal, laying down comprehensive requirements with which all vessels must comply. Any ship over 400 tons or certified to carry 15 or more persons must have a planned garbage management system. There must be a designated garbage officer who implements the plan and keeps and maintains a garbage record book. The garbage plan outlines how the ship will collect and separate the waste, whilst the garbage record book keeps a detailed record of the discharge or incineration of waste at sea and in port. With the exception of plastics, the permitted means of waste disposal will vary from place to place. Thus, it is best to keep different types separate. Plastic should be put into one bin, non-flammable material, such as bottles and cans, into another, and biodegradable garbage into a third. Paper bin liners are very useful for the collection of biodegradable waste from cabins, mess rooms and galleys. Incineration in a suitable plant is the best method of disposal, but if there is no incinerator, the materials must be kept in sealed plastic for shore disposal. Use of onboard compaction devices can greatly reduce the volume of garbage to be stored. Keeping garbage on board may create a fire risk. Accordingly, the storage area should be equipped to the appropriate fire protection standards of SOLAS Chapter 2.2. Although food waste, dunnage and sweepings may be disposed of at sea, strict limits are laid down in the MARPOL Convention to regulate this. Consult the vessel's garbage management system or MARPOL Annex 5 to avoid illegal dumping of this type of waste. Please remember, though, buoyant waste may eventually arrive ashore from wherever it is discharged. Therefore, it is best practice to use shore-based reception facilities wherever possible. The provision of shore reception facilities for the disposal of ship's waste, in line with the IMO manual with specific reference to special areas, is a responsibility of all states ratifying the MARPOL Convention. As well as their own duties with respect to waste disposal, masters should also know those of the coastal states and should report any inadequacies. It is the master's responsibility to ensure that members of his crew are properly trained for the job they perform. The ship's operation and safety manuals will provide all the necessary information to ensure good practice on board. Copies of the MARPOL Convention must be readily available for reference. To be sure that illegal dumping of waste is avoided, the MARPOL Convention, Annexes 1 and 5, should be studied with care. Details are included in the workbook that accompanies this video. MARPOL also deals with the amounts of pollutants permitted to be discharged in different areas. The annexes stipulate special areas where certain disposal options are totally prohibited. For example, in the case of discharges of oily water, these include the Antarctic, Baltic, Northwest European waters, Mediterranean, Black and Red Sea areas, the Gulfs area, the Gulf of Aden, the Oman area of the Arabian Sea, and the southern South African waters. The key conclusion to be drawn in fighting pollution is that, besides adhering to the internationally agreed regulations, we should all adopt stricter discharge arrangements in individual shipping companies and on each ship. Having watched this video and seen how pollution levels can be reduced, ask yourself this: is there anything I can change in my working practices that can reduce or prevent all the pollution for which I may be responsible? Isn't it worth the extra effort to keep our waters unpolluted? The fate of the oceans is in your hands.